Aria's knees hit the snow at exactly 11:47 p.m. Security footage would later show she tried to stand 3 times. Failed 3 times. By the 4th, she stopped trying. The Black Lotus Lounge had a strict policy. No one enters without a reservation, no exceptions, no mercy. But at 11:51 p.m., the door opened. Not for a reservation. For her. The man who stepped out didn't ask her name. Didn't ask what happened. He simply looked at his guards and said 2 words that changed her life. She's mine. Andrew had thrown her away in the snow. Kang Dae-Hyun picked her up from it. And in Busan, what Kang Dae-Hyun claimed, no one, absolutely no one, could touch. But let's go back. Back to when Aria Cole still believed in love. The apartment was freezing because Aria had turned down the heat to save money. She stood in the kitchenette, hands trembling as she lit the single candle on the strawberry cake she'd baked at 4 in the morning. The recipe had taken 3 attempts. The first one burned. The second one collapsed. The third one wasn't perfect, but it was made with everything she had. On the counter sat a small wrapped box. Inside was a scarf she'd sewn herself, navy blue with gray threading. It had taken her 2 weeks. Her fingers still had needle marks from where she'd pushed too hard, too fast, trying to finish it in time. She'd skipped lunch for 5 days straight to afford the fabric. The good fabric, not the cheap stuff that would fall apart after one wash. She checked her phone. 9:47 p.m. Andrew said he'd be home by 9. She waited. The Christmas lights she'd strung across the window blinked red and green. She'd bought them at a convenience store, the cheapest set they had. One of the bulbs was already burned out, but she'd hung them anyway because she wanted the apartment to feel festive. Outside, Busan glowed with wealth she'd never touch. Luxury cars hummed past on streets she couldn't afford to park on. Couples in expensive coats laughed on their way to restaurants Aria couldn't even pronounce the names of. But tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight was Andrew's birthday. Tonight, she'd show him that love didn't need money. That effort mattered. That she mattered. The door opened at 10:15 p.m. Andrew walked in, sleet melting off his coat. He didn't look at her. He dropped his bag on the floor with a heavy thud and went straight to the fridge. "Happy birthday," Aria said softly. He pulled out a beer. Cracked it open. Took a long drink. Still didn't look at her. "I made you a cake," she continued, her voice smaller now. "And I got you something." Andrew finally looked at her. His eyes were cold, the same eyes that used to make her feel seen. Now they made her feel small. Invisible. "Wrong. You made a cake," he repeated, his tone flat. "This." And she picked up the box, held it out with both hands like an offering. "This. I made this for you. It took me a while, but I wanted it to be special." He stared at the box like it was contaminated. Like touching it would somehow infect him with her poverty. Then he took it. Ripped the paper off without care. Opened it. The scarf unfolded in his hands, the gray threading catching the light from the Christmas bulbs. For a moment, Aria thought she saw something soften in his expression. But then he laughed. It was a sharp, ugly sound that cut through the apartment like broken glass. "Is this supposed to be a joke?" Her stomach dropped. "I made it myself. I thought you'd." "You thought what?" "That homemade garbage would make up for the fact that you're an embarrassment." The words hit like a slap. Aria felt her throat tighten. "Andrew, please don't. Do you know what my colleagues said when they saw you at the company dinner last month?" He threw the scarf onto the table. It landed next to the cake, looking small and pathetic. "They asked if I was doing charity work. They left, Aria, at me. Because of you." Her eyes burned. She blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears. "I dressed the best I could. I tried." "You tried? You showed up in a dress from a thrift store. You couldn't even afford decent shoes. Do you know how that made me look? Walking in with someone who looked like she couldn't afford bus fare. I don't have money for." "Exactly." His voice rose, echoing off the thin walls. "You don't have money. You don't have prospects. You don't have anything. And I'm tired of pretending that you're enough. I'm tired of pretending that love is enough when I'm the only one bringing anything real to this relationship." The room went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic outside. Aria's voice came out as a whisper. "I love you." Andrew finished his beer in one long gulp, set the can down on the counter with the metallic clink, looked at her with something worse than anger. Indifference. Like she was already gone. Like she'd never mattered at all. "Love doesn't pay rent, Aria. And I'm done being the only one who brings anything to this relationship." He walked to the closet, pulled out her coat, the thin one with the broken zipper she'd been meaning to fix, threw it at her. It hit her chest and fell to the floor. "Get out." Her breath caught in her throat. "What?" "You heard me. Get out. I don't want you here anymore. Pack your things and leave." "Andrew, it's snowing outside. It's almost midnight. Where am I supposed to?" "Not my problem anymore." He opened the door. Cold air rushed in like an avalanche, extinguishing the candle on the cake. The smoke curled upward, disappearing into nothing. "You've got 10 seconds, or I'll call building security and tell them you broke in." Aria's hands shook as she bent down to pick up the coat. Her legs felt like they'd give out any second. She looked at the cake with its extinguished candle, the scarf lying on the table, the Christmas lights still blinking uselessly. "Please," she whispered, hating how desperate she sounded. "Please don't do this." Andrew checked his watch. 7 seconds. She walked to the door, each step feeling like walking through water. Her entire body was numb. At the threshold, she turned back one last time, searching his face for any hint of the man she'd fallen in love with. "I skipped meals to buy the ingredients for that cake. I worked overtime for a week to afford that fabric." Andrew's expression didn't change. Not even a flicker. 6 seconds. She stepped into the hallway. The door slammed shut behind her with a finality that echoed in her bones. The sound reverberated in the empty corridor like a gunshot, like the ending of something that could never be repaired. Aria stood there, staring at the closed door, waiting for it to open again. Waiting for Andrew to say he didn't mean it. That he was just angry. That he still loved her, even a little. That 3 years together meant something. The door stayed closed. She pulled her coat tighter, fumbling with the broken zipper, and walked toward the elevator. Her reflection stared back from the metal doors, hair messy, eyes red and swollen, lips trembling. She looked exactly like what Andrew said she was. Nothing. No one. A charity case. The elevator ride down felt like descending into hell. The streets of Busan were brutal in winter. Wind came off the ocean like knives, cutting through her thin coat like it wasn't even there. Snow fell in thick sheets, already piling on the sidewalks, making everything look clean and pristine. Beautiful. A lie. Aria walked without direction, without purpose. Her phone was still in the apartment, sitting on the nightstand. Her wallet too. The little money she had, gone. She had nothing except the coat on her back and the shame burning in her chest like acid. She passed restaurants full of people celebrating. Through the frosted windows, she could see families laughing, couples toasting, friends sharing meals that cost more than she made in a week. Bars glowing with warmth, music spilling out every time the doors opened. Hotels with doormen in pristine uniforms who looked at her like she was dirt on their pristine steps, something to be swept away before the paying guests noticed. Her feet led her into the wealthy district, where buildings stretched into the sky like monuments to everything she'd never have. Where cars cost more than she'd make in a lifetime, parked casually on streets lined with designer boutiques and exclusive clubs. She didn't know why she walked there. Maybe because the lights were brighter. Maybe because she wanted to disappear into something beautiful before she froze. Maybe because she had nowhere else to go. That's when she saw it. The Black Lotus Lounge. It was a building that didn't try to impress. It simply was. Black glass that reflected the snowy night. Gold trim that caught the streetlights. 2 guards at the door in suits that probably cost more than 2 months of her rent. A line of luxury cars waited at the valet, Mercedes, BMW, one car she didn't even recognize but knew was expensive by the way people looked at it. Aria's legs gave out on the sidewalk across from it. She collapsed onto the snow-covered pavement, her knees hitting concrete first, then her hands as she tried to catch herself. Pain shot through her palms. She tried to stand. Her legs wouldn't cooperate. Like they'd decided they were done carrying her. She tried again. Failed again. Her muscles were done. Her body was done. On the third try, she managed to get to her knees, swaying. On the fourth try, she stopped trying. She knelt there in the snow, shaking so hard her teeth chattered, crying without sound, wondering if this was how her story ended. Alone. Forgotten. Frozen to death on a street she didn't belong on, in a city that had never wanted her. She didn't notice the guards approaching until they were standing over her, their shadows falling across the snow. "You need to move," one of them said. His voice was firm but not cruel. Professional. Like he'd done this before. Aria looked up. The guard's face was blurry through her tears, just a shape against the lights of the lounge. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'll go. I just need a minute. Just 1 minute. You're disturbing our guests. Move now or we'll have to call the police." She tried to stand again. Pushed with her hands against the frozen pavement. Her legs buckled immediately. She collapsed back into the snow, her body refusing to obey. The second guard pulled out his radio. "We need..." "Wait." The voice came from behind them. It was quiet, but it carried weight. Authority. The kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to be obeyed. The kind of voice that made men twice its owner's size stop and listen. Both guards went rigid, their postures changing instantly. Aria turned her head, snowflakes catching in her eyelashes, melting on her cheeks. A man stood in the doorway of the Black Lotus Lounge. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a black coat that looked like it cost more than everything Aria had ever owned combined. His face was sharp, handsome in a dangerous way. Dark eyes that saw everything and gave away nothing. There was a scar along his jawline, thin and white, the kind you got from something serious. Kang Dae-Hyun. Though Aria didn't know his name yet. She just knew that everyone around her had stopped moving. Stopped breathing. The world had paused. "Who is she?" Dae-Hyun asked, his voice calm. "No one, sir," the first guard said quickly. "Just someone who collapsed. We were handling it." "I asked who she is. Not what you think of her." The guard swallowed hard. "We don't know, sir. She just appeared." Dae-Hyun walked forward. His shoes crunched on the snow, expensive leather that probably cost more than Aria's entire wardrobe. He stopped in front of her, looking down with an expression she couldn't read. Not pity. Not disgust. Something else. Something like recognition. "Can you stand?" he asked. She tried. Her body refused. "No," she admitted, her voice barely audible. He crouched down, meeting her at eye level. Up close, she could see the scar along his jawline more clearly. Could see the coldness in his eyes that somehow, impossibly, wasn't directed at her. Could see the way he looked at her, really looked at her, like she was a person and not just a problem to be removed. "What's your name?" "Aria." "Aria," he repeated, like he was testing how it sounded, testing how it felt in his mouth. Then he stood, a fluid motion, and looked at his guards with an expression that made them both straighten. "Bring her inside." The first guard hesitated. "Sir, the VIP guests are arriving in 10 minutes. If they see..." Did I stutter? "No, sir." "Then do what I said." Dae-Hyun looked back at Aria one more time. His expression softened, just barely. Just enough to be human beneath all that ice. "She's mine," he said, his voice carrying across the street. "No one touches her. No one questions her. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir." Then he walked back into the Black Lotus Lounge, his coat billowing behind him, and the guards had no choice but to obey. They lifted Aria to her feet, each taking an arm with surprising gentleness. She was too weak to resist, too cold to care. Her legs dragged as they brought her through the golden doors, past the line of wealthy guests waiting to get in, past women in fur coats and men in tailored suits who stared at her with expressions ranging from curiosity to disgust. Past the lobby dripping with crystal chandeliers and marble floors so shiny she could see her reflection, bedraggled, broken, wrong. Inside, warmth hit her like a physical wave. The lounge was enormous, all dark wood and soft lighting that made everything look like a movie set. Music played somewhere in the distance. A piano, slow and haunting, played by someone who actually knew what they were doing. People in expensive clothes lounged on velvet couches, drinking cocktails that probably cost more than Aria's grocery budget for a month. Maybe 2 months. Every eye turned to her. She was a mess. Soaking wet. Shivering. Bleeding from where her knees hit the concrete. Her cheap coat dripping melted snow onto marble that probably cost more per square foot than she made in a week. But no one said a word. Because Kang Dae-Hyun was already at the bar, pouring something amber into a glass, and when he moved, the room held its breath. The guards brought her to a private room at the back, down a hallway lined with paintings that looked expensive and old. It was smaller than the main lounge but still more luxurious than anywhere Aria had ever been. A leather couch that looked buttersoft. A fireplace already burning, flames dancing behind an ornate screen. Thick curtains that blocked out the world and everything ugly in it. They set her down gently on the couch. "Wait here," one of them said, his voice neutral now. Professional. Then they left, closing the door behind them with a soft click. Aria sat alone, staring at the fire, watching the flames dance and crackle. She should have felt grateful. She should have felt relieved. But all she felt was numb. Empty. Like something inside her had died on that frozen sidewalk, and this was just her body going through motions. The door opened. Dae-Hyun entered, carrying a tray. On it, a teapot with delicate cups, a bowl of soup that smelled like heaven, and a folded blanket that looked thick and warm. He set it on the table in front of her without a word. Then he poured tea into one of the cups, steam rising, and held it out with steady hands. "Drink." Her hands shook as she took the cup. The warmth spread through her fingers, up her arms, into her chest where the cold had settled like ice. She sipped. It tasted like ginger and honey and something else she couldn't name. Something expensive. Something healing. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't respond. Just watched her drink with those dark, unreadable eyes. When she finished, he gestured to the soup. "Eat." "I'm not hungry." "You're shaking. You need food. Eat." She obeyed because she didn't have the energy to argue. The soup was rich, savory, perfect. Seafood and vegetables in a broth that tasted like it had been simmering for hours. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until the first bite. She ate slowly, aware of his eyes on her, aware that this was probably the best meal she'd had in months. When she finished, he handed her the blanket. "There's a room upstairs. You'll stay there tonight." Aria looked up at him, searching his face for the catch. There had to be a catch. Men like him didn't help people like her without wanting something. "Why are you helping me?" For the first time, something flickered across his face. Not quite emotion, but close. A shadow of something old and painful. "Because I know what it's like to be left in the cold," he said quietly, his voice dropping to something almost vulnerable. "And no one should have to freeze twice." He turned to leave. "Wait," Aria said, her voice stronger now. Federal warm. Almost human. He stopped, his hand on the doorknob. "What's your name?" He looked back at her over his shoulder, and for a moment, she saw something almost like a smile. "Kang Dae-Hyun." Then he left, and Aria was alone with the fire and the blanket and the strange, impossible realization that the most feared man in Busan had just saved her life. She didn't know it yet, but that was the moment everything changed. The room upstairs was bigger than Andrew's entire apartment. A king-sized bed with white sheets that looked like clouds. A bathroom with marble counters and a shower that had more settings than Aria knew existed. Rain, massage, mist, combinations she couldn't figure out. A closet with clothes already inside, women's clothes in various sizes, all with tags still attached. Designer brands she recognized from magazines. She didn't question it. She was too tired. Too broken. Too grateful to care. She showered until the water ran cold, washing away the snow and the shame and the feeling of Andrew's words cutting into her skin. Then she put on the softest pajamas she'd ever felt, silk, real silk, and climbed into bed. The sheets smelled like lavender and something else. Something clean and expensive and safe. She cried herself to sleep, but they were different tears now. Not tears of despair. Tears of release. Of disbelief. of something that felt dangerously close to hope. When she woke, sunlight streamed through the curtains. For a moment she forgot where she was. Then it all came back in a rush. Andrew. The snow. The guards. Dae-Hyun's voice saying she's mine. She got up slowly, her body aching in places she didn't know could ache. On the nightstand, she found a note in clean, precise handwriting. Breakfast downstairs. Take your time. The clothes in the closet are yours now. She dressed in the clothes from the closet, simple jeans that fit perfectly and a cream-colored sweater that felt like wearing a cloud. Everything fit like it had been chosen specifically for her. She looked at herself in the full-length mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. Almost normal. She made her way down the stairs carefully, her legs still weak. The lounge looked different in daylight. Empty. Quiet. Just staff cleaning glasses and straightening chairs, preparing for another night of excess. The space felt bigger without the crowd, more honest somehow. Dae-Hyun sat at a table by the window, reading a newspaper. Morning light fell across his face, making him look younger. Almost peaceful. A full breakfast spread was laid out in front of him: eggs, toast, fruit, pastries, more food than two people could possibly eat. He looked up when she approached. Set down the newspaper. Sit. She sat, feeling small in the large chair. He poured her coffee without asking if she wanted it. Black, no sugar. Pushed a plate toward her with food already on it. Eggs, toast with butter, sliced fruit arranged like art. Eat. She ate. Everything tasted expensive. Real butter, fresh bread, eggs that weren't watery and overcooked. Strawberries that were actually sweet. They ate in silence for a long time. Not uncomfortable silence. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that felt okay. Then Dae-Hyun set down his newspaper and looked at her with those dark eyes that seemed to see everything. Tell me what happened. So she did. She told him about Andrew. About how they'd met 3 years ago when she first moved to Busan, how he'd seemed kind at first. About the apartment they shared. About how things changed when his career started taking off and she couldn't keep up financially. About the cake and the scarf and the door slamming shut. About walking until her feet bled. About collapsing in the snow. She told him everything, her voice shaking at times, tears threatening to fall but not quite making it. She told him things she'd never said out loud, not even to herself. Dae-Hyun listened without interrupting. Didn't check his phone. Didn't look away. Just listened like her story mattered. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Where will you go? I don't know, she admitted, the words heavy. I don't have anyone here. No family. No friends. He was everything. Then stay. She blinked, sure she'd heard wrong. What? Stay here. Work for me. I need someone in the kitchen. The pay is fair. You'll have a room. Food. Safety. He said it like it was simple. Like he was offering her a regular job, not changing her entire life. I don't understand. Why would you? Because you need help, he said simply, meeting her eyes. And I'm offering it. No strings. No debt. Just work. Honest work. Aria stared at him, searching his face for the catch. There had to be a catch. Men like him didn't help people like her without wanting something. Money. Control. Something. But his expression was unreadable. Patient. Waiting for her answer without pressure. Okay, she whispered, the word feeling like jumping off a cliff. Thank you. He nodded once, decisive. Good. You start tomorrow. Mrs. Park will train you. She's strict but fair. Listen to her. I will. And Aria? Yes. Welcome to the Black Lotus. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks found their rhythm. Aria learned the pulse of the Black Lotus Lounge. She worked in the kitchen alongside Mrs. Park, a stern woman in her 60s who spoke little English but taught Aria everything through demonstration and the occasional sharp word in Korean. Mrs. Park showed her how to prepare everything from simple rice dishes to complex seafood platters that looked like art. How to cut vegetables at specific angles. How to season by instinct. How to move in a kitchen like dancing. Aria learned fast because she had to. Because Mrs. Park didn't tolerate laziness. Because for the first time in her life, someone expected excellence from her and believed she could deliver it. She learned Korean too. Basic phrases at first: hello, thank you, excuse me, where is the bathroom? Then more complex things. Food terms. Kitchen vocabulary. How to take orders from the floor staff. At night, she returned to her room upstairs, exhausted but satisfied in a way she'd never felt with Andrew. This was different. This was earned. She rarely saw Dae-Hyun during the day. He was always busy, meetings in closed rooms with men who wore expensive suits and spoke in low voices, phone calls in languages she didn't understand, visits from people who looked at her with curiosity but never spoke to her directly. But sometimes, late at night when the lounge closed and the staff went home, she'd find him there. Sitting by the window. Staring out at the city like he was looking for something he'd lost. One night, 2 weeks into her new life, she brought him tea. The good kind from the kitchen, the kind Mrs. Park only made for special guests. He looked surprised when she set it down. You don't have to do that, he said. I know. But you helped me. So I want to help you. He smiled. It was small, barely there, gone as fast as it appeared. But real. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. She sat. They talked. Not about anything important at first. Just small things. The weather. The city. The ocean she could hear but never see from her window. Her attempts to learn Korean and the words she kept mispronouncing. Say this, he said. Gamsahamnida. Gamsamanida, she repeated slowly, stumbling over the syllables. Better. It means thank you. Gamsahamnida, she said again, this time with more confidence. You're welcome, he replied in English, and she realized it was the first time she'd heard him switch languages mid-conversation. It became a routine. Late nights. Quiet conversations that felt like secrets. Aria learned things about him in these moments. That he'd grown up poor in a neighborhood that didn't exist anymore, torn down to make room for luxury apartments. That he'd built his empire from nothing, from blood and sacrifice and choices that still haunted him. That he was feared because he had to be, not because he wanted to be. That fear was just another kind of armor. And he learned things about her. That she loved books, especially old ones that smelled like libraries. That she'd always wanted to travel but never had money for it. That she believed people were fundamentally good, even when they'd proven otherwise. That she still thought about Andrew sometimes, wondered if he ever thought about her. You're naive, he said one night, but his tone wasn't cruel. Maybe, she admitted. But I'd rather be naive than bitter. He looked at her for a long time, like he was trying to figure out if she was real. Don't let this city take that from you. I won't. Promise me. I promise. He nodded, satisfied. Looked back out the window at Busan's glittering skyline. But the world needs people like you. What kind of people? The kind who still believe. She didn't ask what he meant. She thought she understood. But Busan had other plans. And naive belief, no matter how pure, couldn't protect her from what was coming. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon in early March. Aria was at the market 3 blocks from the lounge, buying vegetables for the kitchen. The streets were crowded with the lunch rush, full of vendors shouting prices and customers haggling in rapid Korean she only half understood. She was focused on picking the freshest peppers when she heard a voice behind her. A voice she'd hoped never to hear again. Aria? She froze. Every muscle in her body locked. She didn't want to turn around. If she didn't turn around, maybe it wouldn't be real. Maybe she'd imagined it. But she turned slowly, already knowing what she'd find. Andrew stood there, dressed in a navy suit that looked expensive. His hair was different, styled professionally. He looked exactly the same and completely different. Like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't thrown her into the snow and left her to die. I thought that was you, he said, smiling that familiar smile. You look good. Different. Healthy. Aria's heart pounded so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. What do you want? I want to talk. Is that so wrong? Yes. His smile faded. Don't be like that. I made a mistake, Aria. I've been thinking about it. About us. I want to make it right. You threw me out, Andrew. In the snow. I had nothing. I know. And I'm sorry. I was angry. Stressed about work. I said things I didn't mean. You meant every word. He stepped closer. She stepped back, bumping into the vegetable stand behind her. Aria, please. I miss you. Can we talk? Get coffee? I just want to explain. No. His expression darkened, the mask slipping. You think you're better than me now? Because you're working at some club? I know where you are, Aria. I've seen you. Walking around in nice clothes, looking like you've moved up in the world. I'm not doing this. She turned to leave, her vegetables forgotten. He grabbed her arm. His fingers dug into her skin through the sweater. Let go, she said, trying to pull away. Not until you listen. You owe me that much. I don't owe you anything. I gave you 3 years. A hand landed on Andrew's shoulder. Unyielding. Heavy with threat. She said let go. Andrew turned. His face went pale. The color drained so fast Aria thought he might pass out. One of Dae-Hyun's men stood there. She recognized him from the lounge, tall, built like he lifted cars for fun, with eyes that showed he'd seen things and done worse. He wore a black suit that couldn't quite hide the shape of something underneath. Something weapon-shaped. Who the hell are you? Andrew demanded, but his voice shook. His hand released Aria's arm. Someone you don't want to upset. Walk away. This is between me and her. This is private. Nothing involving her is private anymore. The man's voice didn't rise, but somehow got quieter. More dangerous. Away. Andrew looked at Aria, then at the man, then back at Aria. She could see him doing the math. Weighing his options. His ego against his survival. Survival won. He walked away quickly, disappearing into the crowd. The man looked at Aria. Are you hurt? No. Thank you. Boss wants you back at the lounge. Now. She gathered her vegetables with shaking hands and followed him back through the streets of Busan, Andrew's grip still burning on her arm. When she got back to the lounge, Dae-Hyun was waiting in his office. The door was open. He sat behind his desk, but his posture was tense. Dangerous. Come in, he said without looking up. She entered. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit. She sat, her heart still racing. Tell me exactly what happened, he said, finally meeting her eyes. There was something in his expression she'd never seen before. Something cold and lethal. How did you know? I have people watching you when you leave. For situations exactly like this. Tell me everything. So she told him. About Andrew appearing. About the conversation. About him grabbing her arm. About the guard intervening. Dae-Hyun's jaw tightened with every word. His hands formed fists on the desk. What's his full name? Why? Because he won't touch you again. Ever. Dae-Hyun, please. Don't hurt him. I just want him gone. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to something that made her shiver. I'm not going to hurt him, Aria. I'm going to make sure he understands that you're protected. That's different. How is that different? Because one leaves marks. The other leaves fear. Fear lasts longer. She hesitated, chewing her lip. Promise me you won't seriously hurt him. I promise I won't do anything he doesn't deserve. That wasn't quite the same thing, but she gave him Andrew's full name anyway. Andrew Hale. Investment banker at Kim and Associates. Lives in the expensive part of town now, apparently. Dae-Hyun wrote it down in a notebook. Precise handwriting. Then he looked up at her. You're safe here. You understand that? Yes. No one touches what's mine. No one threatens you. No one makes you afraid. His eyes burned with something intense. Not while I'm alive. The weight of those words settled over her like a blanket. Warm and heavy and terrifying. Thank you, she whispered. Don't thank me for basic decency. 2 days later, Andrew called her. She didn't know how he got her new number, but she answered because she needed to know. I'm sorry, he said immediately, the words tumbling out fast. I'm so sorry. I won't bother you again. I swear on everything. What happened? Nothing. Just, please tell him I understand. Please tell him I won't come near you. Please, Aria. What did he do? Nothing. He didn't do anything. Andrew's voice cracked. He just made things very clear. I understand now. I won't contact you again. Ever. Then he hung up. Aria found Dae-Hyun that night in the lounge, in his usual spot by the window. What did you do to Andrew? I had a conversation with him. That's all. What kind of conversation? The kind where I explained the consequences of bothering you. I showed him financial documents, bank accounts, properties, his career path, his future. I simply explained how quickly things can disappear in this city when the right people decide they should. She stared at him. You threatened his entire life. I protected yours. He looked at her calmly. Would you prefer I'd done nothing? No. She sat down across from him. Thank you. You don't have to thank me for keeping you safe, Aria. That's not negotiable. It's just what I do. Something shifted between them in that moment. Something neither of them could name but both of them felt. The air changed, charged with something dangerous and warm and terrifying. Why? She asked quietly. Why do you care so much? He was silent for a long moment, staring out at the city lights. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Softer. Almost vulnerable. When I was 16, I watched my sister freeze to death on a street not far from here. She'd run away from a bad situation. I was too young, too powerless to help her. I found her 3 days too late. He paused, his jaw tight. You reminded me of her that night. The way you looked. The way you tried to stand but couldn't. I wasn't going to watch that happen again. Aria felt tears burn her eyes. I'm sorry. Don't be. Just be safe. That's all I ask. She reached across the table and took his hand. He didn't pull away. They sat like that for a long time, holding hands in the empty lounge while Busan glowed outside. The weeks blurred together after that. Spring started pushing winter away. The snow melted. The ocean wind turned less brutal. Aria's Korean improved dramatically. She could hold full conversations now with Mrs. Park, who'd warmed to her considerably. The old woman even smiled occasionally, which the other kitchen staff said was practically a miracle. She laughed more, smiled more. The nightmares about Andrew faded to distant memories. And Dae-Hyun, cold, untouchable Dae-Hyun, started to soften around the edges. He asked her about her day over late-night tea. Brought her books he thought she'd like. Taught her how to play chess, though she suspected he let her win sometimes. Showed her how to read people, how to spot lies, how to navigate the dangerous world he lived in. You're teaching me to be like you, she said one night. No. I'm teaching you to survive people like me. One night in early April, she beat him at chess fairly. No mercy. No letting her win. You let me win, she accused, even though she knew she hadn't. I didn't. Liar. He smiled, and it reached his eyes this time. Maybe I'm just getting old. She laughed, and the sound filled the empty lounge like music. Like something that had been missing and finally came home. He watched her laugh with an expression she couldn't quite read. Something between pain and wonder. What? She asked. Nothing. You make this place feel different. Different how? Less like a cage. More like a home. Her breath caught. The air between them suddenly felt heavy with words neither of them knew how to say. But happiness, Aria was learning, is fragile. Beautiful and temporary and so easy to break. It shattered on a Friday night in late April. Aria was closing the kitchen, saying goodnight to Mrs. Park, when she heard shouting from the main lounge. Not unusual, sometimes guests got drunk and rowdy. But this was different. This was angry. Desperate. She hurried out and froze. Andrew stood in the center of the room, drunk and furious and stupid. 2 guards tried to restrain him but he kept struggling, kept shouting. Where is she? He screamed. Where's Aria? I know she's here. The lounge had gone silent. Every guest, every staff member, everyone stopped and stared. Dae-Hyun appeared from his office like a shadow materializing. Cold. Terrifying in his stillness. You need to leave. Andrew laughed, wild and bitter. You think you can just take her? You think your money makes you better than me? I don't think. I know. Last warning. She's mine. Andrew lunged forward. Dae-Hyun didn't move. Didn't flinch. The guards intercepted, slamming Andrew to the marble floor hard enough that the sound echoed. Aria ran forward without thinking. Stop. Please, just stop. Dae-Hyun's eyes found hers across the room. In them she saw rage barely contained. Saw violence waiting. Saw something break when he looked at her face. Aria. Go upstairs. But. Now. Not angry at her. Never at her. But firm. Final. She went, her legs carrying her up the stairs even as her heart stayed behind. She waited in her room, pacing, heart pounding against her ribs like it wanted out. 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. Then 2. Finally, Dae-Hyun entered. There was blood on his knuckles. Not a lot, but enough. His shirt was rumpled. His hair messy. He looked more human than she'd ever seen him. Is he? Banned from every establishment I have connections to. Which is most of this city. He won't come back. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. He looked at her with those dark eyes that saw everything. He could have hurt you, Aria. He was drunk and angry and looking for you. I won't let that happen. Why? She whispered, even though she thought she knew. Hope she knew. Why do you care so much? He was silent for a long moment. Then he stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, see the scar on his jaw, feel the heat radiating from him. Because you're the first person who's looked at me and seen something other than a monster. Because when you smile, this place feels less like a cage I built for myself. Because when you're not here, everything feels colder. He stopped, took a breath that sounded painful. Because you matter to me. More than you should. More than is probably safe. Aria's breath caught in her throat. I'm dangerous, he continued, his voice rough. My world is dangerous. You deserve better than this. Better than me. You should leave. Go somewhere safe and forget about me. And if I don't want to? Then you're a fool. She smiled through tears that were suddenly falling. Then I'm a fool. He reached up, hesitated like he was afraid to touch her, then brushed a tear from her cheek with surprising gentleness. His hand was warm. You deserve someone who can give you a normal life. Someone who doesn't have blood on his hands. You saved me, Dae-Hyun. When I had nothing. When I was nothing. You made me feel human again. You were always human, Aria. You just needed someone to remind you. She took his hand, the one with blood still drying on the knuckles. Held it between both of hers. Then let me remind you too. You're not a monster. You're just a person who's been hurt and learned to hurt back. But you don't have to be that person with me. Something in his expression cracked. The ice he wore like armor. The distance he kept like a weapon. He pulled her close, and she went without hesitation. His arms wrapped around her like he was afraid she'd disappear. Like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to something good. She held him back just as tight. They stood like that for a long time in her room, two broken people holding each other together, the city glowing beyond the window. I don't know how to do this, he admitted quietly into her hair. I don't know how to be good for someone. Then we'll figure it out together. He pulled back just enough to look at her face. You really are a fool. You're fool, she said. He smiled, really smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Made him look younger. Softer. Human. Mine, he agreed. Then he kissed her, gentle and careful, like she might break. Like she was something precious he was afraid to damage. She kissed him back, pouring everything she couldn't say into it. Thank you. I see you. I choose you. I'm not afraid. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me, he whispered. Not as an employee. Not as someone I'm protecting. Stay with me because you want to. I already am, she whispered back. Outside, it started to rain. Not snow this time. Spring rain that washed everything clean. They moved to the window together, watching the rain fall on Busan, on the streets that had almost killed her, on the city that had taken everything and somehow given her this. Do you remember the night you found me? She asked. Every detail. I thought I was dying. I thought that was how my story ended. And now? She looked up at him, at this dangerous, feared, impossible man who'd chosen to save her. Now I think it was just beginning. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. She fit perfectly there, like that space had been waiting for her all along. I'm still not a good man, Aria. I don't need you to be good. I need you to be real. I can do that. They stood like that, watching rain fall on a city that had tried to destroy them both and failed. Watching the neon lights reflect off wet pavement. Watching Busan transform from winter to spring, from death to life, from ending to beginning. What happens now? She asked. Now we figure it out. Together. Together, she repeated, liking the sound of it. The rain fell harder. The city sparkled. And in the Black Lotus Lounge, in a room that used to feel like a cage, two people who'd been left in the cold finally found warmth. Not in wealth, though he had it. Not in power, though he wielded it. But in each other. In choosing to be vulnerable. In deciding that maybe, just maybe, they deserved to be happy. Andrew had thrown her away in the snow like she was nothing. Kang Dae-Hyun had picked her up and shown her she was everything. And Aria, naive, foolish, hopeful Aria, had chosen to believe in both of them. In the man who saved her. In herself. The rain continued to fall, washing away the last traces of winter, making everything new again. I love you, she said quietly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. She felt him go still behind her. Felt his breath catch. Felt the moment stretch and expand into something terrifying. Then his arms tightened around her. I don't know if I remember how to love someone, he admitted. It's been so long since I let myself feel anything real. Then I'll teach you. The same way you taught me to be strong again. He turned her around, cupped her face in his hands, looked at her with eyes that were finally open. You're the bravest person I've ever met. I'm terrified. That's what makes you brave. He kissed her again, slower this time, like they had all the time in the world. Like tomorrow was guaranteed. Like happy endings were possible for people like them. When they broke apart, both smiling, he said the words she'd been waiting to hear. I love you too. God help me, I do. God help us both, she laughed. The rain fell. The city sparkled. And two broken people decided to be whole together. Not perfect. Never perfect. But real. And chosen. And theirs. So if you made it all the way to the end of Aria and Dae-Hyun's story, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below telling us what you would have done in Aria's situation. Would you have stayed with Dae-Hyun? Would you have left? Would you have given Andrew another chance? Let us know your thoughts. And listen, if this story made you feel something, anger at Andrew, hope for Aria, butterflies when Dae-Hyun showed up, then do me a favor. Hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. Subscribe to the channel because we've got so many more emotional journeys coming. Stories about people who fall. People who rise. People who find love in impossible places. You don't want to miss what's next. Trust me. More stories. More emotions. More moments that'll make you believe in second chances. See you in the next one.